show and the Lyon Share podcast with Ed Lyon. Ed, how are you? And you have a surprise. You said there's going to be an amazing show today.
I'm rocking and rolling. I'm excited because my guests are two veteran tax podcasters who are both really good at making taxes fun. There aren't many of us out there who can do that. So whenever you can get, there's a law that the three of us can't be on the same plane because if the plane goes down, the tax world loses too much. Mary and Ashlee, I'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves and talk about the tax-plainers.
Yeah, Mary, you want to go first?
Sure. Yes, I'm Mary. I've been a tax attorney for about 20 years now. I hate to admit that. It makes me feel old. I originally didn't think I would be in anything law at all. I was determined to be the female version of Indiana Jones. I was archaeology all the way. I wanted to dig up old dead things and solve puzzles of history and prehistory, but I did get bit by the tax bug, and I'm problem solving and digging my way through strange pieces and fitting them together and working them out anyway. I've done a few different things. I've worked for Bloomberg. Back in the day, I actually started at what was called B&A. I think most tax veterans are familiar with the B&A portfolios. I was many years there, loved it. I then did a long stint as a tax controversy attorney at a law firm, helping all kinds of clients with all businesses, individuals with all kinds of tax controversy problems. And I loved it. I love challenging the IRS. I love finding creative workarounds. After that, I joined Thomson Reuters. During the last, actually, it's been a little over a year, I just took some of the skill set that I've naturally had, and I had heard LinkedIn was more of a fun forum than it had been prior to the pandemic. And so I thought, I'm a good writer. I write a little differently, I think, with a little humor, and it's tax writing. And so I said, I'm just going to commit to hopefully a post a day on LinkedIn in that style. And Ashlee and I immediately found each other that way because she had been doing something similar, and we share those traits in common. And I feel really blessed and fortunate because we found each other, we connected, and we've created this thing called tax planning. And we've created kind of a community on LinkedIn there I really feel like it's a novel and first thing on, at least on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it probably is. Years ago, when I published my first book through Press Hall, I did a series of national television appearances, and CNN dubbed me the funniest tax guy in America. So I've been going out to dinner on that in the tax world, at least for 20 years. It stands out. It stands out because people think of taxes as a burden and a pain in the butt and a technical thing that they don't want to think about. So when you can make it entertaining, that makes a difference. Ashlee, you have a similar story, but not the same. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, it is very oddly similar. And the fact that we're two blonde tax attorneys that speak from the same viewpoint and found each other in this world that keeps getting smaller, I think is really fascinating. But I have a liberal arts degree in classics and philosophy and literature, so nothing tax related.
When you got out of college, let me guess, the classics companies weren't hiring.
No, and I didn't want to work at Starbucks. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I became really good at cocktail parties and small talk, and I can do that with the best of them just because I learned a little bit about a lot of different topics. And so I went to law school and graduated during or right before the recession. So I graduated law school in 2007 and immediately moved to a new state and to follow my spouse and his job. And then basically had to start from scratch because the recession hit. No one in South Carolina was hiring anyone from out of state. It seemed like, especially not Oklahoma, because where the heck is Oklahoma anyway? And
my dad was from Oklahoma, and until I was 15 years old, I thought he was an immigrant.
It's hilarious. Yeah, so I ended up having to hang a shingle, basically, and I call that my baby attorney boot camp phase of life. First 5 years, went to family court and did a lot of things that put me outside of my comfort zone. And then I wanted to get back to Oklahoma and not litigate anymore because I never wanted to do that. In fact, I break out in hives when I go to court. It's not fun. But then a tax position came open with a firm that does a significant amount of tax resolution and controversy and helping taxpayers with their back tax issues and navigating the IRS and the difficulties that the IRS causes on the average American taxpayer. And so I was able to really jump in and get some great experience there and just fell in love with all things tax. And then when really it wasn't until the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed, then I saw there was an opportunity with planning and the fact that many CPAs and typical accounting and tax firms didn't have necessarily the bandwidth to dig into those new provisions. I got a job with Deloitte in their national credits and incentives group. And there I was able to really dig into a lot of the nuances of the new laws that were ever evolving. And then COVID hit, CARES Act passed. Had to dig into that one and have been focused primarily on ERC since then, both helping taxpayers claim the credit. And now I do a significant number of handle audits and appeals and on the controversy side, but I'm also doing advisory and proactive planning similar to what you're doing through my own practice.
It's funny how people sometimes sneak into tax without expecting it. By the way, we've got some show and tell. Mary, you said that you're an archaeology fan. I am a paleontology fan. So I've gone into Montana digging for dinosaur bones. This is a hadrosaur bone that I found outside Choteau, Montana a couple summers ago. So digging old things out of the earth is a whole lot of fun. I went to law school hoping to be a prosecutor. So I graduated from Hamilton College in New York. I had a degree in history and a minor in government. The history companies weren't hiring, so I went to work for the government. Worked on Capitol Hill for Jack Kemp, who was the architect of the '86 Tax Reform Act, and then Dick Cheney. Came back to law school to be a prosecutor, and I met a couple of guys in my 1L section who were both headed for tax law. One was a CPA, and the other just was interested in it. And I thought, you guys are nerds. You guys are geeks. Tax is just, it's not going to be any fun. I didn't even take a tax law class until 3L, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. By then, I had realized I didn't want to be a criminal defense attorney because, Neil, you have not been to law school. In law school, law classes are a semester-long exercise in finding ways to get the accused sprung, which is great and that's important and all. It just wasn't what I wanted to. It wasn't the system that I wanted to be involved in. Tax turned out to be great. I have not practiced law. I've defended a couple of clients at audit, but my hives, Ashlee, would make your hives look really small and inconsequential if I had to go to court. I've been to court more times as a plaintiff and a defendant than I have as counsel. But I love tax. I love the planning. So for me, the fun is I'm going to look at a client's situation and I'm going to say, okay, there's this married couple and she does this and he does this and their kids and here's their income and here are the organizations they're involved in. Here's where they are. Here's where they want to go. How can I craft a plan to get them from where they are to where they want to go with the least amount of interference from the IRS possible? And for me, that's a whole lot of fun. And I know that people are watching us on YouTube now thinking, these guys need hobbies. I've got the hobby. That's what the dinosaur bones are for. But the real fun is creating the plan. So you guys have both done planning and controversy work. Which is more fun for you guys? Which would you prefer if you had to pick one?
Oh, it's so hard. I feel like I go back and forth on this. I love both. Honestly, I love delivering the value for clients in the advisory and planning engagements, but I love holding the IRS accountable and pointing out when they've screwed up. And I derive a great deal of value from that. And so when I can do that and cite the taxpayer bill of rights and get them to do something that both the client and maybe even their CPA thought was impossible, or they had been trying for years, or helping taxpayers that have been shouldering this burden of a tax problem. I call it the psychology of a tax problem because it very much is a thing. And I think tax resolution and controversy is, I don't know, it's so hard. You asked me to pick and now I'm like, I can't pick, because also when new tax law comes out and legislation, I love to dig into all the nuances of that and argue about what this word means or what they meant by that. And here it is in the tax code somewhere else. And this is what they meant. All of that.
Opportunity. It's Americans love courtroom dramas. movies, TV shows. You can't turn on a TV at night without there being some show with somebody in a courtroom. And I think a lot of people don't understand what you do with the IRS. No, you're not standing in front of a judge. You don't have the pomp and circumstance of being in a courtroom. But anyone who likes the idea of watching the little guy stand up to the government, watching David take on the government Goliath and win, and if they get a satisfaction out of that, if they get a thrill out of that, you're in a different arena. But that's exactly what you're doing. You are helping your clients take on the Goliath of the IRS, which works very hard to intimidate people, to make people be scared. There's a reason that celebrity prosecutions on April 15th. It's to intimidate Americans into compliance. And for you to be able to stand up for your client and say, I took on the government, not just City Hall, but the IRS, and I won. That has got to give you a sense of real personal satisfaction. And Mary, I see you nodding your head the same. So what's your take on compliance versus planning, on controversy versus the ahead of time stuff? For me, people ask me about controversy. I say, look, once the tax return's filed, it's out of my, I don't do anything there. It's all before the return. Tell us your perspective, Mary.
You asked an interesting question. I think it was in a chat maybe before this, something like, why do we love taxes?
Yeah. And can we be infectious enough that the people watching us decide that they're going to love taxes or at least dislike it a little less?
I think I love to hate taxes.
Okay.
And I hope I didn't lose you. Did I lose you? My computer's a little...
No, you're moving fine. You're good.
Okay. My computer just went wonky on me. It wavered. I think that kind of drives me and makes it interesting to me because you're putting the courtroom drama that people like to watch. It's really in their living rooms or their business when it's either one of those really. To do tax planning often means you need to resolve a controversy or anticipate one coming up. So for me, it's like saying which one I like best is difficult because inevitably I need to confront or prepare to confront elements of both. So I really do enjoy both of them, maybe equally, but it's a matter of because I want to hold the IRS accountable and make sure that my clients are making the most out of what they can, planning or controversy wise. As long as my clients are winning, I feel good.
No. And there's no right or wrong answer. We don't have a binary choice. We can do both. I personally don't, but that's just my own preference. So taxes, fun taxes. How much of your day would you say is work a day? I'm doing paperwork, I'm responding to inquiries, I'm doing research, and how much of it is the fun dealing with the people, dealing with the clients, or dealing with the IRS? I ask because I am on my 10th Zoom call of the day, and people ask me what I do for a living. I say I work in a Zoom factory. Neil, I'm probably on Zoom more than you are these days.
Okay, so how many hours? So that would be a great question. So how many hours a day do you have calls?
I've been on Zoom since 9 this morning.
I have been on Zoom since about 9. I took a half-hour break, but I've been on Zoom since about 9 as well.
Okay. This is a long day for me. You probably have more consistently long days, but
it depends. No, it all depends on days. It's not completely full yet, but yeah. I had to do his talk today too. Yeah, it's been an exhausting day.
Okay. So Ashlee, Mary, what's a day in the life of a tax-plainer? What does that look like?
My day is right now, I've joked that they have the derogatory terminology that they use to describe tax practitioners that handle a high volume of a specific credit or resolution. So we had for a while, it was OIC, offer and compromise mills.
Yep.
And then we had ERC mills. And right now, I think I'm an IDR mill, which IDR, for those that don't know, is an information document request. That it's when the IRS initiates an audit of a tax return or a tax period, they issue an IDR. And so I have had a significant number of those come into my firm as of late. And so it's turned what was normal on its head. I'm not complaining. It's obviously the IRS is keeping the doors open with all of their shenanigans and everything going on. So a lot of my day right now is, of course, I am on Zoom calls a lot. Everybody wants to pick the brain of a tax attorney, whether it's a CPA or a wealth advisor, or I have people bringing me novel strategies that they've been pitching to anyone and everyone that that will listen. They're wanting me to give my stamp of approval. And right now my days don't really have a normal. So I'm on Zoom a lot with clients or reviewing documents before they're submitted to the IRS on these audits. And then usually in the evenings is where I get to do the fun brainstorming with my team and trying to figure out on the advisory and planning side, how do we accomplish the client's goals and stay within the law, and coming up, bouncing ideas off of each other and pulling in other experts. Because I think this tax planning and advisory space I've found is very collaborative. Here we are, technically we could compete with each other, but none of us are. There's plenty of tax savings to go around for everyone, I feel like. So, yes. Right. I just in general like that kind of BA piece of it, where you're trying to put together a puzzle and structure things the right way to make sure you're protecting the client and mitigating tax as much as you can. I end up now these days having to do that kind of in my free time, what would have been my free time that I don't have much of these days. So my days aren't really, I would say, normal right now. But
Mary, what about you?
And if my dogs bark, I'm sorry, but if they see something outside, they'll be no.
Guess what? The good news is Zoom blocks out all background noise.
Thank you.
Okay, just letting you know that. That's another Zoom tip by the media giant. Yeah, my dog will come and bark. I got this nice mic, right? And nothing comes up. And I didn't do that. But the problem is you still could be distracted. I've been distracted where someone's cleaning the house and I'm like, oh, I can still work. But I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I focusing? So there you go.
Right.
I'm just giving you that little tidbit on this podcast, and Ed likes me to pop in sometimes and say, I'm here.
Sure.
For me, I would say a lot of what Ashlee just said reflects my daily life as well. I would add that especially recently, more time is involved with longer conversations with more confused IRS professionals than usual, than before the recent cuts and some decentralizations going on in different offices with the IRS. And so that has real impact carrying over into daily practice, where unfortunately, even sophisticated issues are being sent to the wrong department in the IRS. And I'm on wild goose chases. It doesn't matter. I've done this forever. And it doesn't matter that I have some really good connections in the IRS that should help facilitate easier, at least, like which department do I go to? They are even hampered at this point. So daily life in the last half year, especially working the resolution part, is exponentially more confusing and time consuming for those reasons. And that's really unfortunate. And I am Ashlee and I are both actively engaged in efforts to that situation. And so that's a new part of practice, or
is that a result of budget cuts at the IRS?
That and the after effects of DOGE, the cut. It really is a new world in many ways. If you just talk about the ERC example, for instance, I put together a roundtable last week. I try to do quarterly ones with TAS. That's the Taxpayer Advocate Service, for any listeners. And they're amazing. They fight so hard for taxpayer rights. And we are bringing concerns to the table, a group of 9 practitioners we assemble. And one of the great questions, it might have even been you, Ashlee, that asked it, but it was like, look, it used to be John Melly, who was like the central figure for the ERC show in the IRS. Who is it now? Because we're not seeing him active. Instead, we're seeing maybe a Teresa Williams sign off or another name. Who's the go-to now? And I was on an ABA panel in the fall last year with McAnally when he was the guy. And in fact, Taz very openly let us know that unfortunately, there is no McAnally now anymore. They have removed, there is no person in that role any longer. So it's just an example of how dramatically and chaotic.
So what is that going to do to the average person that files their taxes? This is just an interesting question. You're saying that certain things have been cut, certain things that you used to call and say, what the heck did I get this audit for? What is this? Why did I get this in the mail? You get on the line, you wait all day, and you might talk to someone live. Those days are done, almost gone.
You can still get to a live person, but it introduces a level of chaos, incompetence. You're not getting to the person that knows what to do. You're just getting to the person who's assigned to pick up the phone. And documents are flying to different apartments that have nothing to do with it. It's chaos.
And so if you cut the government, there is going to be chaos. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Not good for you guys.
Well, personally, I love the idea of smaller government, but the reality of having that at this point before AI or other innovative things can compensate for the smaller government, we are in a way creating bigger government or more bureaucracy and more headache and more challenges. And eventually there's hopefully a light at the end of the tunnel and technology will close that gap, but we're not there yet. And tax offering real time.
Let me give you the new thing. There's a new article. I'll have to share it with you, Ed, that 95% of companies that implemented AI have completely failed so far.
Yeah, they're not showing an ROI. And I don't know enough about AI at a bigger company level. Certainly, I use AI every day. It's a productivity tool for me. I don't really use it as a research tool the way some people might anticipate. But yeah, so we want the impetus. We get a new administration. We want smaller government, which I think a lot of people would like on the right and the left. They'd like a less expensive government, a more efficient government. So we're going to move away from enforcement by manpower or woman power in the case of the tax-splaining. We're going to move away from enforcement by people, and we're going to move to enforcement by technology. That's great, but it's like Elon Musk promising self-driving cars. They never materialize. They're still not here. They're still not here. They're still not here. Meantime, people need to commute. People need to get around. So there is no enforcement by personnel. There's no enforcement by technology yet.
Right.
So the person who votes for a politician in good faith looking for smaller government discovers they're one of the few that get caught in the IRS web. It's impossible to get out. It's even harder for real credentialed experts, veterans like you, like Mary and Ashlee. Now it's harder for even the professionals to get people out. Smaller government means you're stuck.
This is fascinating. And I know, Ed, this is where I kind of want to play this game, because this is something that people are like, oh yeah, great, the IRS. But if you get caught into something, or literally you're the chosen audit or something that is completely off, it looks like there's nothing you guys can do.
Well,
Not nothing, but meaning it's a longer process.
It is a longer process. It is a more disorganized process, and it takes a lot of patience.
You guys have patience, that's for sure.
You got to have patience.
I don't. I guess that would be a problem if I were in resolution.
Yeah, even the IRS employees that are veteran employees are expressing frustrations. We have some even that will send Mary and I private messages on LinkedIn, and it's when I have a conversation, for example, with an appeals officer and I ask questions, or an examiner that's been doing it for a long time, and it's what happens now. And they don't really know sometimes what the new process is or the new protocol internally, because maybe it was just rolled out or there hasn't been training on it. And so it's not just the shrinking of the employee population, but they're also reorganizing and putting people in different places. We'll have suddenly, oh, your case isn't with me anymore. It's been moved to a different examiner. They can't tell you who, they can't give you the contact. They have no idea. You just have to wait and hope that power of attorney form follows whatever was transferred and they contact you.
Sounds like local government. If you're dealing with the county courts or something.
I would venture to say most counties and municipal governments are much more efficient.
Yeah, I would
than the IRS.
So at the beginning of the year, there were 100,000 people working for the IRS. Then DOGE fired 30,000 of them. And then a week later said, never mind, we'll hire you back. We can't lose you. Then laid off 30,000 of them. And now they're back. And nobody seems to know how many people are even working there. It really is chaos, and they don't have the resources to make the trains run on time, whether those resources are budget from Congress or when the budget hits the agency, the actual people. We still need people to do this. And if the people aren't there, it's going to be longer and more difficult for everybody.
And they are still actively closing the physical brick and mortar taxpayer assistance centers. I read the report. The latest report was just last week. I'm not sure if it was Tax Notes or a Bloomberg article, but it was in the news. Additional centers closed. And those brick and mortar. So I am from a town in the Midwest of 300 people. I grew up without electricity or running water. We were Mayberry Amish or something. I don't even know what you call it. But when you are in the Midwest and it takes 2 or 3 hours to drive anywhere, and that population is not even to this day inclined to adopt and embrace technology, and you close their nearest brick and mortar assistance center where they can walk in and talk to someone from the IRS about their situation, you're creating real impact in their lives. And this was in the news just recently that they may be hiring people back, putting them wherever they are, but they are still with that drive of we're going for more technology. They're closing the brick and mortars. And by the end of this month, they're also going paperless. Yeah.
So that means everything will be electronic. Very interesting.
That's the plan. So I'm sure it's going to fail initially quite badly and everyone's going to feel it. But that is the plan. And it's at the end of this month. I have a lot of concerns for the people where I'm from, middle America. It's just, and it's really not talked enough about. I don't think the news is speaking for that group of Americans. And I think it's really unfortunate. But a lot is still going on. A lot. Not just, okay, they're hiring some people back, but there's no organization, there's no centralization, there's no...
Their default.
It's just bad.
Yeah, their default now, honestly, in my experience, is just to ignore and deny.
Yeah.
So you think, oh, fewer IRS agents may be good because then maybe they won't notice these mistakes on my tax return or whatever. What happens is I have a client right now that should never have been selected for audit. It is settled position and reasoning that we have. This should never have even been selected. We submit everything, we make the argument, and then next thing you know, they get a notice of deficiency saying that, oh, by the way, we're disallowing what you claimed and you owe us all this money. There should have been a lot happen between the submission and that, and no one ever contacted us. When I would call in, there was no one actually assigned. And so now it's caught in this cycle. I finally got a hold of someone who was just honest and said, oh, yeah, I see where you provided your documentation. Looks like nobody reviewed it. So resend it and put this in the cover letter. And it's just like, this is happening over and over again where they're just, instead of working out in the taxpayer's benefit, which I think is the misconception a lot of times, they just will outright just deny it because they don't have time or resources to actually review. Yeah.
That's really important to realize, that the odds of somebody at the IRS noticing your return, paying attention to your return may be lower, but if they do pay attention, you're SOL.
Or if that computer system, the AI model, picks it up inadvertently and shouldn't have. We saw that, how bad that went with the IRS ERC disallowance letters. We call it disallowance gate, which got us quoted from Wall Street Journal to Bloomberg and all kinds of publications and was a hot topic because the AI model they used was just flat out wrong. It was denying ERC claims, saying the taxpayer did not operate a trade or business during the COVID pandemic, and they had been in business sometimes for 20 years. And it's because it was using bad data points. It's only as good as we can make it, and it's just not there yet.
Yeah, when I open up ChatGPT, at the bottom of the page, it says, ChatGPT can be wrong. And
right now what I'm seeing happening, it can be wrong many times and it's failing and it's not productive. It's in its process and things look great. and then they're crap again. What do you expect? Something the government purchased?
I know, and
it's probably not that good.
Yeah, we've been saying, Mary and I have been saying with this whole ERC thing, if they would have just put out an RFP and gotten proposals from some of us practitioners, we could have assisted in saying, okay, here are the parameters you should be searching. Here are the codes, the industry codes you should be looking for. They didn't even look at that. Location. I mean, and training their employees on the credit, that is, and I know I'm just talking about ERC right now, but it's really with anything. I explain to clients when they hire me for a controversy matter, a lot of what I'm going to be doing is educating whoever we get on the other side, because they may not have been trained or understand how this law applies to your situation. And so a lot of times that is what our role is, to ensure that they're following the rules and applying them properly and holding them accountable and getting that manager involved if necessary, citing the taxpayer bill of rights. I'm citing that more than ever in my career on a regular basis.
That's actually a great point to add to. I think that is a huge part of our day-to-day, more so than ever before in recent times, is the education part. That's now a burden on the practitioner. A good practitioner, anyway, will have to expect to spend a substantial amount of time educating the IRS.
Yeah. So what's the solution? What's the ideal solution, and what do you think the real world solution is going to be?
I do think there are private sector resources that could be beneficial if that somehow could come into play. I think in America, industry has proven we're efficient, and there are the best of the best out there putting together these AI models, and there's got to be a better way. I'm not opposed to some AI system in place with the IRS if it makes it better and efficient all around. I think we're not only taxpayers when we're defending a claim or a tax return or a position, but we're all taxpayers and we're paying for all of this.
Exactly.
So it's like the waste, and it's just cyclical.
What kind of program do you think they purchased? This is the problem. It had to have been open source. That means it couldn't not be it couldn't be any of these large language models. They could take portions of those large language models and involve them. But the problem is that it becomes outdated very quickly because of the GPUs that you have to use to AI models. So we don't know what the government purchased, how they developed it. Maybe Elon did, maybe he didn't, in so many ways. But then training people to use technology in a place that never had technology, really.
Yeah, that's not contemporary technology. And AI gets a lot of the attention because AI is sexy right now. A lot of it is just basic blocking and tackling. It's database, for example. And by the way, this morning we have a new richest person on the planet. It's not Elon Musk. Lawrence Ellison, CEO of Oracle, which is a database software company, is now the richest person on earth.
I'm not surprised.
He's been wanting to be number one on that list. He's been doing dark, unspeakable things in his basement to get to be number one on. But he started out working for the CIA, database stuff. It was Palantir before Palantir existed. But just getting databases, just being able to get information, having a common place for documents, because if your case is going to be moved among 3 different revenue agents, they need to be able to access the same information and do that. It's not just the AI. So here's your trivia question, Neil, and I'm asking you because Ashlee and Mary probably know this. The IRS keeps what they call a master file on every taxpayer. That is obviously computerized. The question for you is, who was president of the United States when the IRS commissioned this system?
Bush Sr.?
Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson.
Yes, that's a trustworthy person.
Most of the people watching this podcast weren't even born when Lyndon Johnson.
I wasn't born when Lyndon
commissioned. Okay, I was born, but I didn't have much to say for myself back then. So it is a matter of technology, and not just the AI, not just the sexy AI part. It's the basic blocking and tackling of having a database that holds all this information. By the way, your master tax file, it is kept on magnetic tape. Yeah, it is a nightmare. And so it's not going to get easier. We can talk about what really is going to happen. Okay, real world, Mary, what's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen in the next, let's say next year? Better off in a year, or are we going to be worse off?
I'll answer that if you remind me. But I did want to just circle back to the question you asked just previously. What can we do? What might help this? And maybe this is ideal, it's dreamy, whatever, Mary's dreamy. But I would like to see the American people, I would like accountability to be a real factor. I would like Americans to learn about things. And I think there are a couple that should really fire them up and inspire them to want the IRS to be accountable and to get to their Congress people and force change. And one of those things, which I think is so, any taxpayer in America should be livid about what I'm going to say. And as a practitioner, 99.9% of the time when I tell a client this, their reaction is, that's not true, and I have to show them. But we've all heard the debate a million times about, do you really want a tax refund, or do you want to owe the IRS just a little bit? Are you giving them a tax-free loan? Is that what you're doing? That's not even the issue. What every taxpayer in America should understand is that there is no statute, there is no law in the books that requires the IRS to pay any taxpayer their refund. There is no reason. This is not, see, I feel like you're looking at me like Mary's crazy, but I'm right. Ashlee will tell you.
Mary's Crazy was the name of my high school metal band.
There you go. There is not. The Taxpayer Advocate Service has had this as one of their MSRP's most serious problems that goes to Congress for years and years. Taxpayers should be livid about this, that they trust every year and they get excited. I'm getting a $500 refund this year. For the most part, you often do. But we are seeing what really is opening people's eyes up is the ERC catastrophe, frankly. We are seeing at a larger scale ever before recognition of this fact that there's no law that compels the IRS to give you your tax refund. You're at their mercy if you're owed a refund. So things like that, if you can get that. Oh, and the other one that I think ERC also really highlights and should make every taxpayer least concerned, if not livid. The IRS implemented, as part of a propaganda warfare, frankly, they implemented on circumstantial evidence a moratorium.
Yes.
On their own.
Yes.
Did it. Today, I don't even think it's officially been declared over. In any other realm of the law that I'm aware of, where a moratorium is implemented, there's usually a reasonable amount of time, typically around 6 months, where you need to go in front of a judge and you need to convince that judge there's a reasonable basis for continuing a moratorium.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got away with not doing that either. So every taxpayer in America needs to realize that the IRS is operating unreined. They have shown the ability to just wield power with no check or balance, and they need to insist on accountability and protect their interests and go to Congress about it.
Sure.
I think if we want to make things better, we need to do what Americans do and change our system that way. So that's dreamy, Mary. And you say, what do I think will happen in a year? Is it going to be better or worse?
This is Doomsday Mary.
Yeah. Oh, Doomsday Mary played the second set after midnight.
Yeah, she's on.
This is Doomsday Mary. Yes. I'm pretty afraid it's going to be worse. I'm just not seeing a trajectory or I'm not seeing that we need a revolution of sorts in the citizenry. We need them to see what's happening and we need to make a change. And I'm not seeing that. And so given that, I just see a trajectory of the IRS and the government doing what it does, which is screw things up.
Oh my goodness. So there's the only thing we can do is complain about it and complain to the right people. And that's our politicians, and vote for the right people in office to fix this.
But what a big part of what Mary's saying is the IRS is doing whatever the hell they want, regardless of what Congress says. And that is a big issue within the tax community, not just in the controversy side. Last year, the Supreme Court issued an opinion in the Loper-Bright case, which had to do with the Department of Commerce. Actually, the Loper-Bright's attorney used to be my roommate when I worked on College Hill. I should get him on the podcast.
Really?
But so it was a case where Congress passes a law, but they can't pass a law that's going to anticipate everything. So executive agencies like the Department of Commerce or the EPA or the IRS issue regulations. Those regulations are supposed to interpret the law, but you get to a point sometimes when those regulations cross the line and they're actually legislating, not just regulating. That happens with the IRS. For example, a big controversy, something called captive insurance, which is a tremendous risk management strategy that I often illustrate for my clients. But the IRS decided that they don't like it because the strategy was abused and they crossed over a line. In the Loper Bright case, it was the government Department of Commerce saying, we need to put inspectors on your fishing boats and you're going to pay for those inspectors. And the fishing boat said, wait a minute, Congress didn't pass that law. And the Supreme Court agreed. No, that's not this is something that happens with the IRS more and more frequently. Congress passed a law. They created the employee retention credit, and they said companies should get this money because they lost money during COVID. And the IRS suddenly decides, oh, we threw an algorithm at all of these returns, and the algorithm, which Ashlee explained to us, sucked, didn't like these returns, so we're gonna pass a moratorium. That's not what Congress intended.
Exactly.
In fact, Congress intended, judging by their actions, that more and more businesses would be eligible for the credit, and it was expanded and enhanced numerous from a legislative standpoint. They very easily could have put limitations. I know they clawed back Q4 2021 at one point for most taxpayers, but I think that was pretty reasonable. So they definitely could have put additional safeguards in place. They could have made it, instead of industry agnostic, certain industries or certain disaster declared areas with more strict government orders, for example, or what.
Or in a state that closed down school and kept them closed longer, businesses are going to be more impacted than states where schools opened up. They could do all of that sort of stuff through the legislative process. They passed the law. It worked. They expanded the law. They expanded the law, and then the IRS came in and said, nope, we're shutting down this operation of law. And I was at a dinner in Washington, D.C. last year where I saw a former congressman argue this case to chairman of one of the tax writing committees. And it was a good faith argument that, hey, you guys passed this law and the IRS is not doing what you told them to do.
In fact, the Congress instructed the IRS to make available materials and make business owners aware that they may be eligible for the credit. And what they actually did following that was they started putting out these scare tactic bulletins. Danny Werfel was claiming over 90% of claims were fraudulent, which he testified before a Senate subcommittee. And that was based on an isolated anecdote from one tax practitioner that said about 90% of the ones I've seen have not been eligible. One, not being eligible doesn't fraud. And two, how can you make those blanket statements that are just untrue to scare taxpayers into not claiming the credit? And then when they do have some clarity and, the moratorium, and now I understand, and my CPA is feeling more comfortable with maybe filing this for me, so I think I'm going to file it. And then
that's another
moratorium.
CPAs, I had so many clients who would go to their CPA and say, what about this ERC? And the CPA says, you don't qualify. The law literally had been changed 6 or 7 or 8 times from when the CPA first learned about it. CPAs were uninformed. It was the tax equivalent of the fog of war in the pandemic and the pandemic recovery. So a lot of CPAs in good faith telling their clients, no, you can't do this.
And that flies in the face of their justification for killing it early. They were trying to say, if you're going to claim it after January 31st of 2024, it must be fraudulent, not considering, or it's the cautious taxpayer with the cautious CPA that took a while to catch up to the law and make sure they were comfortable and all of that. And so we obviously could go on about the ERC for days.
Oh, yeah. In the meantime, all of that, in my opinion, unauthorized IRS meddling, it has spiraled into myriad other areas of, it's clogging up courts' dockets with ridiculous suits for refunds based on gross receipts. Never mind, okay, the partial suspension, at least you've got some gray areas you can talk about. Ashlee and I have tracked since the beginning numerous gross receipts, just straight up math. 1 + 1 = 2, clogging up district courts of federal claims across the nation. Okay, there are actual cases that need to be heard. Do the math, IRS. You have it now where mergers and acquisitions, things the businesses who have been waiting for these refunds now moving forward in deal. It's affected. Employment law matters that are messed up because of the ERC issues. Congress and the American people should take this ERC case study and be alarmed and cognizant of the fact that, God forbid, we face another national catastrophe and Congress wants to incentivize a group of employers to keep our economy going instead of everyone out on the dole. Who would trust them now? These businesses have been put through the ringer, and now even new business arrangements are being held up because of this catastrophe. It's just the people have to wake up. Congress has to take seriously what the IRS did. Somebody, I don't know how it happened, but somebody's got to do it.
All right.
It is the law. All right, guys, this has been enormously fun discussion. Didn't go exactly where I thought it would, but that's fun.
Welcome to podcasting.
We'll have you back another time, and maybe it will go where I thought this one would, and maybe it'll go someplace else that's fun. You guys are delightful. You know, I thought we would talk about why taxes are fun. I think what we've ended up talking about is why a proper functioning IRS is so important.
And I think this is I think the points we got today, Ed, are going to be clips that people want to share, all these things, because this is just unreal stuff, because I didn't know any of this. Now I know what's happening and how awful the government's running the IRS right now.
It is. On that happy note, everyone, one final note, Mary. So you mentioned unauthorized IRS shenanigans. That's an even better band name than Doomsday Mary.
There you go. If you keep showing me hadrosaur bones, I may dig up some scene.
Oh, okay.
I'll go there.
Okay. For our next podcast, I've got some coprolites. You know what those are? Those are fossilized dinosaur poop. For those of you.
Yes. My family lives in Montana.
Oh, okay.
I was initially the paleontology path. I switched to archaeology.
Okay. They're both great paths. Great paths. So we'll share more of that. Mary, Ashlee, thanks so much for your time. This was a whole lot of fun. Neil, as always, thanks for being the ringmaster of my 3-ring circus here.
Exactly. All right. Thanks. All right. That was the special simulcast, the Neil Haley Show and the Lyon Share Podcast and Care.